Well, hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're doing some flocking. Well, back on February the 6th of 2015, I put out a show here on the channel demonstrating how to do the process of flocking. And I was checking it out the other day, and you know what, I know it's only 5 years old, but it's kind of dated. The show has made a lot of changes since then, and I thought it would be fun to update the show and basically make it hopefully a little better than what it was back in 2015. Not to mention as well, I've also gained quite a few new subscribers since then who may not have ventured back that far, and I thought it would be nice to bring them this information as well. So, let's start it off by talking about what is flocking exactly? Well, flocking is a process whereby an adhesive is applied to a project that you're working on, and then a material is blown onto that adhesive in such a way as to make it so that it's soft, kind of fuzzy and that sort of thing when you're done. If you've ever seen a bandsaw box and the inside has this perfect kind of like a velvety covering inside, but it's not material, chances are that's flocking. Flocking can be a lot of different things. It can be a natural material such as pulverized suede, or it can be something like rayon or nylon or polyester, cotton. It can be any sort of thing that's pulverized to a certain dimension. And in the industrial aspect of this, it is done very differently than we do it here in the shop. It is done with a very complicated system of statically charging plates in order to get the fibers to stand up 90 degrees on their end into the adhesive. Look it up. It's an interesting process, but it's way more than we would be willing to do here in the shop. So what is the method in the shop? Well, let's start off by getting into the equipment that you're going to need in order to produce a high quality flocking on your projects. Well, the very first thing that you need in order to do the process of flocking is the adhesive. And the adhesive is very much like and very similar to paint. The difference is this stuff is much thicker. It also only has about a 10 to 15 minute window of working time. So whatever it is that you need to coat or whatever it is that you need to flock, you better be sure that you're only doing a section that you can handle within a 10 to 15 minute window. In a lot of cases, you may have to use a roller to apply it just to make sure you get a nice even coat and a faster application. Now for my project, it is a much smaller project, so I will not be required to use a roller, but what I will need is a brush. Now, the type of brush really doesn't matter as long as you're not losing hairs off your brush in the adhesive. That's kind of important. If those hairs get into the adhesive, you will not get it out unless you're quick enough to get it right away, and it will ruin your finish. So just make sure it's a half decent quality brush that isn't going to be losing bristles. This one here is 1 inch wide, which may be a little bit of overkill for the size of project that I'm doing, but it will make the application of the adhesive that much faster and then giving me more time to work with it. The next thing you need is the flocking material itself. Now this stuff here is pulverized suede. Again, it has many different forms that it comes in. So whatever you want to use is fine with you, but this is what I will be using here. The thing is that the adhesive color matches our spraying material, we'll call it. And what that does is by laying down a coat of color underneath the flocking, if there is ever a time where you accidentally, let's say that the flocking doesn't want to stick to a certain area for some strange reason, you've left it a little too long or it's too thin of a coat, that sort of thing, well then the color of the adhesive is going to show through rather than the bare wood, which it actually minimizes how much you can see your mistakes, we'll say. So this is the third item you need, your texturing material. Well, now you need some way to apply the dry, in this case pulverized suede, and that would be one of these. Very reminiscent for me of those balloon pumps you used to get when you were a kid. I don't know if they still sell those or not. Maybe I'm just showing my age, but it's the same sort of thing. You have two tubes, one that fits tightly inside the other, completely sealed end on one end, and then 5 holes on the other that as you pump this little mini flocker applicator, it forces the flocking out through the holes in a nice even kind of spray across your piece. Now there are other applicators that are available, right up to ones that work like a paint sprayer. Those are more industrial types as far as I'm concerned, and this one here works just fine for any home workshop application. Now although that applicator does a great job, the thing with the actual texturing materials, or the pulverized suede in this case, is it has very, very fine particles, and those particles go everywhere. So you need some kind of a container. And this is just like a cheap, almost like from the dollar store, covered thing that you would put maybe fruit salad in for a garden party or whatever. And I use it in the shop for this sort of thing. So you would place your item in here while you're flocking to try to contain the flocking that is going to be overspray or that be floating around your piece. The reason you want to contain it is because this stuff is reusable. There is a lot of overspray when you're actually applying flocking to a piece, and all of that overspray is 100% reusable. So this helps to keep a good majority of it in the container so that afterwards I can scoop it out, put it back into my jar of flocking material, and save it for the next project. So very important to have it in a container, something like this. Now I mentioned about the fine particles created and blowing around while you're working with this stuff, and guys, I'm telling you, it's nasty. I have managed to produce over the years some pretty colorful Kleenexes when I didn't use a dust mask. And it didn't take me long to figure that out. One application was all it took of putting flocking onto a project, and then later on the day realizing exactly how much of it got into my system, because it is so fine that you don't notice it. So please do not use flocking without some form of dust mask, whether it's one like this, a cartridge based one, or whether it's one of your regular dust masks that you know, your cotton disposable type. Wear something, guys. You need to keep this flocking material out of your lungs. And that's it. That's all you need in order to flock. Specialized stuff? Well, yeah, sort of. But I have seen where people have wanted to use white glue and rubber cement and all this stuff. It will work, the white glue and that sort of thing, but you will not get the quality results that you will if you use the proper adhesive. Proper tool for the proper job, proper adhesive for the proper application. So white glue is for something different, flocking adhesive is for flocking. So what do you do with all this stuff now? You've got your brush or roller, you've got your adhesive, you've got your flocking material, you've got your applicator, you've got your dust mask, and you've got your container to put it in while you're flocking it. What do you do with it? Well, let's head over to the bench and I'm going to demonstrate how easy it is for you guys to flock your projects at home. Well, this will be our project that we're flocking today. And the first thing you want to do, you have to remember that I said that the adhesive is like paint, just a bit thicker. If you're flocking anything that's porous, you need to seal it, because otherwise when you apply the adhesive will suck into, in this case, the wood, and you won't have as good of results. So I have applied 2 coats of water-based varnish onto this, a semi-gloss finish. It was sanded in between each coat, and that will seal up the wood nicely so that it doesn't soak in. If you're doing flocking on plastic or glass or anything like that, you really don't need to seal it. It will not soak up the adhesive. It wouldn't hurt though to give it a light sanding, just to rough it up a little bit to give the adhesive something to bite into. So the other thing you want to remember here is that wherever you apply the adhesive, once you start blasting that flocking material into there, anywhere where there is adhesive, it's going to be fuzzy. That's all there is to it. It is going to have that material adhered to it. There's no two ways about it. So if you don't want something to be flocked and fuzzy, then you need to mask it off. And that's where we're going to start with this, by masking off the bottom. There we go. So now that we have the bottom masked off, this will not receive any of the adhesive, and the adhesive is our next step. Well, as I mentioned, this stuff is very reminiscent of paint, and just like paint, it needs to be completely and thoroughly mixed up. So that is the first thing you want to do. Give this a really good stir. I don't know if you can see this, but it's separated. This should be brilliant red, just like our flocking material, but it has separated. So first things first, get in there and get this really well mixed through. And once you've got it completely mixed, you can move on to loading the material into your flock applicator. So let's put this aside and load our applicator. Well, for a successful application of flocking, you want to separate your 2 tubes, and you're going to want to fill this tube about halfway with the pulverized suede. And now that you're dealing with this, it's a good time to get your mask on. And there you go. That's that step done. Well, at this point now, it's pretty much a one-shot deal. That's all you get here. That's all the chance you get, is one shot to do this right. Once you start applying the actual flocking material, you cannot reverse the process. You can't just suddenly stop and say, oh, I missed a spot, I got to touch it up. So you want to make sure that you get a good, even coating of adhesive onto your piece. So I'm going to do all the edges, and then we're going to place it in our container that we're flocking in, and then I'll do the top. You know, if I would have thought of it, I should have put some gloves on before starting this, because I usually can't look at a finish without getting it all over my fingers. So we'll see how we do here. Now you want to be generous with this stuff. It's not really like paint in that it runs a lot. It will run if you put too much on, but really you want a nice, even, thick coating of this stuff. There we go. I think we've got the body done. I'm just going to lay this in here. And yeah, I told you I was going to get it on my fingers. And then we'll just give the top of this a coat. And there you go. There's a nice even coat of our adhesive. And now it's time to apply the flocking. So you want to get your dust mask on, get your adhesive out of the way, and with your tube half full, you just want to pump this tube repeatedly and completely pummel this thing with the pulverized Tex. And now, just to keep it clean and dust free, prevent sawdust from getting in there, I'm just going to loosely put the lid on there so that it can dry. I'm going to move this out of the shop actually, take it in the house, and I'll let it dry in there. And if I take this away, you can see the fine red particles there on the bench. This stuff goes everywhere, so that's why the dust mask is so important. And at this point, there is really nothing to do but wait. That flocking adhesive needs to cure for a minimum of 12 to 15 hours. Myself, I like to leave it for at least 24, and that's what we're going to do. I'm going to clean up the brush. It cleans up with mineral spirits or with bar sol, so everything's fine there. Things you probably have in the shop anyway, so no special cleanup fluids needed. And we're going to wait. We will be back tomorrow. Well, for you, it'll be in about 20 seconds, and I'll show you how you finish this project off. Well, here we are the next day, and the adhesive should be completely dry. And you can see here that I have an old paintbrush, and what that is for, let me just pull this out of here. What that is for is just to brush some of the excess flocking off of our piece. We're going to actually use a compressor to blow the excess off of this to get all of it off. You could use a vacuum if you want, but the brush does a great job of just taking off the majority of the material that was stuck on there. We're also going to remove our masking as well. And with your dust mask on, just use a compressor to get rid of all the excess fibers that are not fully adhered to your piece. And as I've said quite a few times in this video, all of your excess flocking that's here in your container, this can all just be dumped back into your original container to live on another project on another day. And there you have it. Flocking. Guys, this is a procedure that adds such a professional look to your projects, whether it be on the inside of, say, a bandsaw box drawer, or in a little jewelry box, or a ring belt box case, whether it be on intarsia. I've done that where I have done a Christmas intarsia, and instead of painting pieces, I flocked each individual color, and they turned out just beautiful. They're absolutely gorgeous. Guys, this is something that anybody can do. Regardless of your skill levels, regardless if you're like me and get paint on everything every time you touch something, you can still do flocking and get amazing results. Felt is fine on the inside of drawers, and there's nothing wrong with felt, but I always find it's a real pain in the neck. Flocking is so quick, it's so even, it looks so professional that it can turn a project from, wow, that looks great, to, wow, that really looks great. So it may be something you want to consider for your shop. So what about the applicator? Do you need a separate applicator for every color? No, you don't, not at all. All you need to do is, once you dump it back into its original container, the flocking material, give it a tap and whatever. You can blast it with a little bit of compressed air just to clean it out. You can wipe it if you like, you don't have to, but I usually just give a little blast of compressed air with your dust mask on, and it cleans it right out, and you're ready for the next color. No need to mess around. The actual flocking itself comes in a variety of colors from a variety of manufacturers. And you don't necessarily have to use the manufacturer that I used, but I will put a link to it down below. Check around, check the internet. You may have a supplier very close to you, and you might be surprised at what this stuff costs. It's not that expensive. It looks like an initial output is rather large for cash when you're first purchasing the stuff you need, but the stuff lasts forever. I mean, I've had that bag of red for, oh my goodness, I don't know how many years, 10 years or more, and I'm still working on the same bag because all of the overspray and all the stuff that doesn't adhere to your project all goes back in the bag to use on another day, which is what makes it, you know what, it makes it economical. Because of that, it really only costs pennies to coat each one of your projects. And as long as you seal up your adhesive properly so it doesn't dry out, there's no issues. Guys, flocking is a lot of fun. As I said, this is a remake of an old show just to freshen it up a little bit and bring it a little more to what today's show is like. If you want a good chuckle, I'll post the link down below to the original version of the show, and you can see in the background what the shop looks like and the difference between today's show and the show of 2015. Guys, if you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the bell so that you don't miss the notifications of future episodes of the show. I hope you've enjoyed today's project. I hope you found it informative. If you haven't heard of this before, I hope I've brought you something new that you're going to try for yourself. And I also hope that you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another Alternative Tuesdays.